We've all heard the horror stories of when you go and buy a pre-owned bike off of Facebook Marketplace, you bring it home and you find this. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to check over any bike for damage, so make sure you watch this before you go and buy that new bike. To make this video easier to remember, I'm going to split the bike into a few different parts. They are the frame, the drivetrain, including the two shifters up the front, the wheels and the tires and that sort of area there, and then accessories like saddle or bar tape or pedals or that kind of thing. So we're going to talk about each of those parts individually today. Step number one is we're going to have a look at the frame. The reason that I say that this is step number one is it's probably one of the most important parts. If the frame has some severe damage, the bike is a write-off and it needs to go in the bin, like that one. When we're checking over the frame, we're going to have a look over the whole thing, including the fork, but there's a couple of key spots that I've seen damaged before, so we're going to look at them first. So the first three spots that I have a look at are the top tube, the head tube, and the seat stay. I'll explain what I mean by that. The reason I say that the top tube is one of the first things that I look at is in the event of a crash where the rider was to completely lose control and hit the deck, and while the bike's bouncing away from them, the handlebars can often swing around and impact the top tube. And it's an impact that's actually going to damage the frame. Quick little side note here as well with carbon fiber, which is what this frame is made of, is carbon fiber is designed to be ridden quite hard. It can handle quite a bit of abuse. The thing that damages carbon fiber is an impact. So just riding along is fine, but if it smashes into a pole, or you drop it and it hits a rock, or the handlebars swing around and hit the top tube, that's what's going to damage it. So we're kind of looking for spots where something could impact it. However, with aluminium frames, if they were to have an impact, rather than it cracking, it's usually just going to dent. A dent is not a deal breaker, but it might give you a bit of bargaining power, so it might be just worth noting if you find a little dent. While talking about the top tube, I might also add into there as well, as the handlebars swing around on a rim brake version, the rim brake might actually touch on the frame down here before the handlebars do, which is what is happening right here. So it might be worth just having a quick little look. If you turn the handlebars all the way, if they're touching here or if they're touching there, just have a look at both of those spots and see if there's any damage on both sides. And in this one, we're fine. The next spot that we need to look at is the seat stay. We've got the seat stay along the top here, and we've got the chain stay down the bottom here. So we're looking at the top one here. The reason that I say that this one can sometimes have damage is if somebody's resting their bike up against a pole and it slides and it bumps up against the pole could put an impact on the side there. Also, I've seen before when people are riding along and their foot might come out and it might hit the seat tube, or perhaps they've broken a derailleur hanger and the derailleur has come around and impacted the top tube. To be honest, if that last one had happened, it's probably really catastrophic and this bike's probably found its way to the bin. But nonetheless, we want to have a look along the seat stay here. One way that you can look is just visually. Then another way is you can run your fingers along it, along all different sides of it, and see if you can feel any bumps or even splinters coming out of the carbon fiber. We just want to see if there's any damage, and we'll check on both sides as well. It's worth noting here that before you run your fingers along it, just have a visual look on the inside and out. You don't actually want to give yourself a splinter. A carbon fiber splinter is quite a bit worse than a wood splinter. So we really don't want to have to do it if we can avoid it. The next place that we want to have a look at is the head tube here. The head tube is this cylinder here that has the headset bearings sitting in it and allows the fork to go through. The reason that I say that we want to have a look at a head tube is if the owner had been unlucky enough that a car might have done a U-turn in front of them and they've run into the side of them and a real heavy T-bone impact, it could actually fold it a little bit, which can cause some creases in the carbon up here, which unfortunately is exactly what happened to this gentleman up here, and it sort of folded down along the front end here. And this frame is a complete write-off, but they've had it fold down there. I reckon if you were looking at buying a bike off of Facebook Marketplace and you went to look at the bike and you found a mark in here, I would lose a bit of faith in that owner. If they haven't told you about a heavy impact that they've had like that, where they might have broken their collarbone on this bike, they might not have mentioned it, I would lose a bit of faith in the rest of the bike as well. So have a quick look there. To be honest, I'd be pretty surprised if they were selling a bike that had damage there. Hey, it's worth checking out anyway. Also, if you're a mountain biker, definitely worth checking out this spot as well. If they've run into a rock and it's completely stopped the bike and they've gone over the bars, or maybe they've done a massive jump and cased it 50-50, it might be worth just having a quick little look there. Again, I'd be pretty surprised, but it's worth having a look. So now we've spoken about carbon fiber frames a bit. Now let's have a quick look at these metal frames. I want to talk about where some of the best places to have a look on the metal frames are, and that is around the welding points. The welding points are where all the different tubes connect to each other, whether it's the top tube connecting to the seat tube and the chainstay in the seat tube and all these different spots, it's where they all connect to each other. So we're just gonna have a quick look at the welds and make sure that there's no damage there. Throughout this video, I've been talking about checking out a carbon fiber frame visually. There's two other ways that we can do it. We can check by doing a squeeze test. So if there's a spot that you think that it might be damaged, but you're not too sure, if you put your fingers there and try and squeeze it as hard as you can, if it feels soft, that could be a sign that it's damaged. If it feels completely rock hard, it might actually not be damaged. It might just be a paint crack on the top, which isn't detrimental, but it might give you some bargaining power. So squeeze test is one, and the other one is a sound test as well. If there's a big mark here, and we think, oh, it's a little bit weird. First of all, that probably lines up pretty well with the handlebar, so side note there. But if we can go along and flick it, and if it sounds different in that spot, the sound is quite muted, like, you know, you're playing drums and you're hitting the snare drum, then you put a towel over it and it sounds a little bit different. If it just sounds different in that one spot, that could be a sign that there might be some damage underneath the carbon fiber there. It's worth mentioning here as well that I've said 3 main spots that I see damage. That doesn't mean that it couldn't be anywhere else. So make sure you have a look across the whole bike, underneath, down tube, all this sort of stuff. These are just the 3 main spots that I've seen damage. Quick disclaimer as well, while we're talking about the frame, I also include the fork in that. So we can have a quick look at the fork. We can do our visual, our audio, we can check the different things around the fork, make sure that there's no paint cracks or anything. And another spot that you might want to check is the actual dropouts here. So if we take the wheel all the way out, and we can just have a look around on the dropouts here. Does it look like there's any splintering? Usually there'll be like some sort of metal plate that's in there on these rim brake options at least. So you'd be pretty unlucky for there to be any damage, but hey, you're about to buy a bike, so we're gonna have a look at as much as we can before we put the money down. So make sure that the wheel goes in and out properly. Make sure there's no like splinters that it's getting caught on or anything like that. We just wanna make sure that it's gonna work when you get back home as well. Now let's start talking about the drivetrain, including the 2 shifters up here as well. With the drivetrain, the first thing I want to do here is just a visual inspection. I just want to look at it, and is there anything that's standing out that doesn't look quite right? For example, is the chain orange and rusty, or maybe there's rust all in the cassette here? Rust isn't the end of the world. A lot of the time you can clean it off, especially if it's just surface rust. But if the bike was incredibly rusty, it might make me think about what the owner might be like with the rest of their bike. So again, not necessarily a deal breaker, but it might just be something worth noting. And now we can start looking at the different consumable parts, being the chain, the cassette, and even the chain rings here. If you're a bit of a bike fanatic and you like working on your own bike at home, you might already have a chain checker tool. This is where we're going to use that. If you don't have a chain checker tool yet, it's not the end of the world, but if you do enjoy working on your own bike at home and you like tinkering with things, you might want to grab yourself a chain checker tool. It's a good tool to have in your home workshop here. It'll cost you between 20 and 50 bucks, so it's not the end of the world, but it's a good tool that you should have just sitting at home. If you have one of these tools already, you probably already know how to use it. So chuck it on, measure the chain, see how it measures. This one's maybe halfway through its life. That chain's about halfway through its life, which makes me think that the rest of it should be okay, but we're gonna have a nice close look anyway. If the chain measures as well worn, like 100 or 120% worn, that could be a pretty clear indicator that the rest of the drivetrain might be worn. So it might just be something worth noting. Maybe you can have a chat with the seller. Hey, when was the last time you had these parts replaced? If they don't know, it's probably not a good sign. As we move across to having a look at the cassette and the chain rings, we can just look at the teeth here. When they're brand new in the box, I'll try and draw what they would look like. They'd almost look like, if I can kind of turn like this, up, flat along the top and then down like that. That's kind of what they look like when they're completely brand new. As they start to get a bit more worn out, for a very extreme example, they'll begin to look a little bit more shark tooth like that. If it looks like that, it is like, it's not, you don't ride that. That's completely worn out. The chain's not gonna grip at all. If it's somewhere between these two, that's a sign that it might be time to start replacing. And this is an extreme example of what completely worn out can look like. And in my opinion, if the cassette is okay, the chain rings are probably okay too. But if the cassette is completely fried, it might be worth having a quick look at the chain rings here. The same rule applies with that shark tooth fin that I was just drawing as well. If it's starting to look like a shark tooth, the chain's probably going to skip over it and you're not going to be able to put down power. That means that it's worn out. An average rule of thumb that I'll just mention here as a bike mechanic, most bike mechanics say that for every 2 chains you replace 1 cassette, and for every 2 cassettes you replace 1 set of chain rings. Not always exactly like that, but it's kind of along those lines. It's a pretty average rule of thumb. While we're talking about the drivetrain, let's have a quick look up at these shifters. The shifters are the part that are actually going to allow the derailleurs to move, and the shifters could possibly have damage if the bike's crashed and they've hit the road. If it's got scuff marks down the side, probably means that they've hit the ground at some point. Again, not necessarily a deal breaker, but it might just look a little bit ugly. And while we're looking at scuffs that could be on the side of a shifter, we can work our way down the rest of the bike here. We'll notice that the derailleur protrudes out the side of the frame as well, so it could be scuffed as well. If there's scratches down the side of the derailleur, that could mean one more thing. There might even be a bent hanger. Let's talk about what that means. So the derailleur hanger is this little piece of metal in here that connects the frame and the derailleur. It's literally designed to fail. It's designed to bend or snap or twist rather than breaking the expensive frame or the expensive derailleur. It's this little part just in here. Now, because the derailleur hanger is designed to bend or snap or twist, when we're having a look at it, it might be bent. If it's bent, it's not a big deal. We are able to bend it back 90% of the time. If we have to replace the hanger, they're usually somewhere between like $40 and $60, which is much cheaper than the expensive frame or the expensive derailleur, but it's still perhaps another expense we need to look at. If the hanger is bent, it means that the derailleur will also be bent. So, well, not the derailleur will be bent, but it will be sitting on an angle because the hanger has bent it. What that means is the chain line that we've got down here, as in from right behind the bike, I'm looking at the chain going over the cassette, and then it comes over the top jockey wheel and then the bottom jockey wheel. Instead of it being perfectly straight, it might be skewed inwards a little bit, which means that it's not going to line up with the cogs on the cassette. When we change gear, it won't shift properly. So we're just going to have a quick look at the hanger here. The final step while we're talking about the drivetrain is making sure that we can shift into every gear, both the front derailleur, if you have one, and the rear derailleur. This is pretty self-explanatory. We're just going to go up and down the cassette, make sure it can go in every gear, and also change the front derailleur and make sure that it can shift. Pretty self-explanatory. I am lucky enough to be a bike shop here, so I've got a work stand. I would imagine that when you're checking out the bike, you're probably meeting in a car park or something like that, so you probably don't have a work stand. So my trick that I've learned is if you've got the bike on the floor, you can rest the saddle on the back of your neck and lift it up like that, and then you'll be able to pedal through the gears and make sure that it shifts smoothly. Another little side note here while we're talking about the drivetrain is the brakes. If we're looking at a rim brake, we want to make sure that there's plenty of brake pad left, and there's also some braking track as well, as in it's not concaved in, it's not cut in, because these rims will eventually wear out. And if it's a disc brake, we just want to make sure that there's still some brake pad left as well. With these rim brake bikes, usually on the braking track, we'll have a little wear indicator. It's usually just a little hole. If you can't see the hole, it might mean that it's completely worn out. I say sometimes because it's not always that they actually have the indicator hole. If it doesn't, you can use something that has a really straight edge like a ruler, and you can put that up against the braking track. And if we can see daylight through there, that means that it's starting to get worn out. If we can't see any daylight, it's still flat and pretty much brand new. If you're looking at a hydraulic disc brake, I would also just double check, this one's rim brake, but if it was a hydraulic disc brake, just make sure that the lever actually stops. It's actually stopping the brake. If you were to pull the brake lever all the way to the handlebar and the wheel could still keep spinning, it means that the brake's not working. This is completely repairable. It's not a big deal, but the bike shop's going to charge you $30 to $50 per brake to get it fixed. So that might give you a bit of room for haggling. This is also a safety thing, so if it pulls all the way to the handlebar, maybe don't test ride it that day. Now we'll start looking at the wheels. The first thing I'm going to look at with the wheels is the tires. We're looking at the rear tire and the front tire. In my experience, the rear tire tends to wear out before the front tire because that's the one that's got the drive going through it. So we'll have a quick look at the tire, make sure that it's not too flat along the top. If there's some like wear indicator dots, you can have a look at them as well, make sure that they're still there. But we kind of just want to have a quick visual inspection, make sure there's no big nails poking out of it or a massive slice in the middle of the tire or something like that. Just a quick little visual check, even maybe a squeeze test, make sure that there's still some air. Whoa, I actually just noticed with this one, this tire We'll have a close up in a second, but this tire is all cracked, which makes me think that it's been sitting in a dry shed for a while because the rubber has completely split open. I'm glad we've noticed that now. And don't worry, this bike's actually just come into the shop to sell, and it's going to go through our 60-point roadworthy checklist tomorrow. And I've got some new tires put aside for it, so don't worry about it. It'll be nice and safe when you're looking to buy it. Now we can start having a quick look at the spokes. First thing I would say is make sure that it still has all of the spokes. Make sure that it's not missing or it's got some cut broken spokes or something like that. What the spokes will do is if they're tightened up too much or not enough or something like that, the wheel actually might be out of true. When I say out of true, I mean it's not spinning straight. As I'm spinning it, I might see it wobbling a little bit like this. Not a big deal. It's easy to repair for a bike mechanic. Again, they might charge you like $30 to $50 anyway to repair it, to do a wheel true. So it might be something that you can try and haggle or negotiate with, but we just want to have a quick little look and see that the wheel's spinning nice and straight. I'm looking at the brake track here actually, or the brake pad, and I'm seeing if it moves away from the brake pad. Another way that you could do it is you could put your finger up against the frame or something like that and just see if it moves closer or further away from your finger. It will just help you notice those tiny little millimeter increments. While we're on the topic of the spokes, let me show you an extreme example that I actually have sitting up here. We were going through the check on this bike recently, and there were a few spokes that were actually starting to, or sorry, the nipple was starting to pull through the rim. This can happen on aluminium, and it can also happen on carbon fiber. If the spokes are done up too tight, or maybe they've hit a massive pothole or something like that, it can actually start to crack. This is the end of that wheel's life, unfortunately. And finally, I want to talk about some of the different accessories that you might find on the bike. Some of these could include handlebar tape. Maybe it's got colorful handlebar tape, but it's all scratched down the side and might just be something worth noting. It might be some damage that you found. Maybe the side of the saddle could be a little bit scratched. It could be on either side. That could be just something worth noting. It's a tool that you sit on, so it's kind of not the end of the world, but it could show a little bit about the bike. And if you're looking at a mountain bike, bent saddle rails are a pretty common one that we see. Maybe they've done a jump and landed sitting on the saddle, and then instead of standing up on their feet, and now they've bent the saddle out of shape. Not the end of the world, but it means that the product's not as it was when they bought it brand new. We can also talk about the pedals. Maybe the pedals are all scratched, or maybe they're missing pins, or the clip system isn't working properly. So have a quick look at the pedals, make sure that they, look like pedals, I suppose. Bottle cages, maybe there's some frame bags that come with it. And the final thing while we're talking about accessories would be the bearings. We've got bearings in the bottom bracket, so there'll be a bearing on both sides. They are what allow the cranks to spin freely. So we just want to make sure that the cranks can spin freely. You don't have to, pull it against the bearings. So have a quick sort of look there. And also in the headset here, the headset bearings, there's one at the bottom and one at the top. That's what allows the handlebars to spin freely. We just want to make sure that they can spin pretty well. Also, if we want to check the condition of the headset bearings, we can put our hand on the frame while we move it. If it's buttery smooth and you really can't feel anything, that's awesome. That means they're pretty much brand new. If it's starting to feel a little bit sandy with your hand here and a little bit gritty and notchy, that could be a sign that these headset bearings are starting to get worn out. And a final top tip that I've got is if you flip the bike upside down and have a look at where the serial number is, which is this one under here, it might be somewhere else on the frame, but 9 times out of 10, it's under the bottom bracket here. If that serial number has been scratched off or sandpapered off or they've painted over it or something like that, I would consider that a red flag when I'm looking at this bike, because that's what thieves do when they steal a bike. They'll rip the serial number off. So just double check it still has a serial number. Doesn't matter what number it is, just make sure that it's still there. And if you can see it, but maybe you're getting the heebie-jeebies from the person selling it and you're not too sure and something doesn't seem quite right, there's a website that you can check, at least here in Australia, and I think in Canada as well, which means probably the whole world. There's a website called the Bike Vault. That's where people can list their bikes as being stolen. So you could have a look at that serial number there, punch it in on your phone on the Bike Vault website, and just see if it might be stolen. So if it's still got a serial number and you reckon that the components all seem pretty good and you're pretty happy and you're ready to put in your offer, now is the chance to go for a quick little test ride, make sure that everything works the way that you think it should, and now you can come back and put in your final offer. And with all that's been said in this video, if it all sounds a little bit difficult and you're not too sure what maybe a worn out component looks like and you're a little bit scared to go and have a look at these secondhand bikes, I'm gonna plug myself. we are Recycle Bicycle Sales here in Adelaide, South Australia. So if you pop in here, you can know that every bike that's come through our shop has gone through our 60-point roadworthy checklist. So we've gone through everything that we've mentioned in this video, plus like 50 other things as well. That's why it's a 60-point roadworthy checklist. So you can kind of rest assured that we've already done the full check on this bike. And if there is any damage, we've mentioned what it is down below and how we can help you fix it. And without trying to talk myself up too much, and we've been in this shop for 2.5 years and we've sold 800 bikes. So without trying to sound too cocky, I think we know how to look over a bike and check it for damage. So come in and buy a bike and rest assured that it is in good condition. If you've bought a few secondhand bikes in your time and you've got some tips that you might have learned that we haven't mentioned in this video, let us know in the comments below. I'm always looking to learn. I might be able to turn that 60-point roadworthy checklist into a 70-point roadworthy checklist if we get enough comments. Otherwise, I'm going to say thanks for watching. We'll see you in store here in Adelaide, South Australia. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. See you guys.